the Wednesday of Holy Week. Last Sunday was Palm Sunday. This Sunday is Resurrection Day, or Easter. Tomorrow is Maundy Thursday, the day we remember Jesus' celebration of Passover, his Last Supper with his disciples, and his subsequent arrest. In fact, in non-COVID times, we would be right now preparing for what we often refer to as a Christian Seder supper, a very moving event during which we share the elements of a traditional Passover meal and contemplate the symbolism of each element. Since we're unable to share the Christian Seder supper this year, I thought this might be a good time to dig a little deeper into this interesting term Passover and explore its development through the Bible. It has changed from its beginning, and yet the symbolism remains remarkably consistent. Let's dig in. The idea of Passover originates in the Old Testament book of Exodus, chapter 11. God's people were enslaved by Egypt, and God, through Moses, repeatedly instructed the Egyptian monarch, or Pharaoh, to let my people go. And repeatedly, Pharaoh refused. Finally, God had had enough. And God's judgment came when he sent 10 plagues upon Egypt in order to gain deliverance for his people. As a reminder, the 10 plagues were blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, the death of the firstborn. Death of the firstborn. That is some serious judgment. The night of that final and worst plague, God told Moses death would come to the firstborn, but the Israelites were to sacrifice a spotless lamb and spread its blood over the doorposts of their homes. The angel of death would then pass over their home, sparing their firstborn from death. Consider that symbolism. God's people were enslaved. He desired to deliver them. His judgment fell on the evil forces that had enslaved God's people in the form of an angel of death. But because of the blood of a lamb, death passed over them, and they were rescued by the blood of a spotless lamb. Passover. After this, the Israelites celebrated Passover every year to remember and commemorate this night. As they were instructed in Exodus 12, they would ceremonially kill a lamb without blemish and remember that night. As time went on, other symbolic items were added to the meal: bitter herbs, unleavened bread. The festival of Passover became essentially a week-long celebration of remembrance that God had delivered them from bondage. When we remember Palm Sunday and Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, we should remember that the reason he was coming into Jerusalem was for the Passover festival. It was, in fact, the Passover meal that Jesus shared with his disciples on that night that he would be betrayed. As a Jew, he remembered that God's people were enslaved. God desired to rescue them, and the blood of a spotless lamb provided their deliverance. But at that moment, Jesus also knew that he himself would become the spotless lamb that would deliver God's people from bondage once and for all. As Christians, we thankfully remember God's deliverance of his people out of Egyptian bondage. We also appreciate the Jewish festival that continues to celebrate that deliverance. But we know it all points to this. Jesus was the ultimate Lamb of God who shed his blood that we might be delivered from the bondage of sin and death. We are saved not because Jesus was a great teacher, which he was. We are saved not because Jesus performed many, many miracles, which he did. We are saved because, using the language of Paul in 1 Corinthians 5:7, because Jesus was our Passover lamb.